Addiction doesn't just affect the person struggling, it changes an entire family. Today, I'm joined by Katie Rizzo, who shares the story of losing her son, Nicholas, to an accidental overdose and the journey of learning to live with grief instead of trying to escape it. We talk about addiction, shame, mental health, and why healing isn't about getting over it. This conversation is incredibly honest, and I'm grateful Katie trusted us with her story. Here's my conversation with Katie Rizzo. Welcome to Overcome with Travis White. And please take a few seconds and leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you may be listening on. It really helps us out. All right, Katie, why don't you start us off by telling us about your journey?
Well, thanks for having me on. So my name's Katie Rizzo, and the reason that I'm on this and Overcome is because I had what I thought was a really perfect life. We had 3 kids. I had a great job here teaching in the public school. I taught AP Bio and honors anatomy. Um, just life was good. My eldest son took both of the classes that I taught in high school. My other 2 that came through the high school, they weren't as excited to have their mom as a teacher. Things were really going well, and our older son, Nicholas, he played soccer, and he had a lot of injuries. He ended up getting a lot of painkillers for those injuries, and he became addicted to pills. He went on to go to college, and he played D2 soccer. There he had more injuries, and he had a lot of anxiety. He ended up coming home, graduating, and he had a pretty raging addiction to pills. We struggled with it for a little while. My husband and I both joined Al-Anon, which is a support group for people who love somebody with addiction, which you probably already know. It's a great group. Um, And it may have saved our lives, but it didn't save Nicholas's. And 2 years ago, he accidentally overdosed. And that kind of led me into like a pretty big traumatic grief. And unbeknownst to me, journaling really is good. I'd never journaled before. And the day that it happened, I just started writing things down just because I couldn't believe this was our reality. I kept thinking like maybe if I write something down, I'll be able to understand. But journaling actually saved my life a little bit. And around 9 months in, I started like trying to look at the framework of like what's been going on. Um, and I realized that a lot of what I was dealing with was it felt like almost pregnancy, and it felt almost poetic that this love that I had for my son for 25 years, that he and I had created this new thing called grief, and I had carried it for 9 months. Around that time, I listened to this artist. His name's Nick Cave. He lost 2 sons to suicide, and he talked about asking grief to leave his body, and so I did that, and um, since then, I've kind of had this grief orangutan who I have to take care of now. Um, and I ended up writing a book about kind of my experience. It's my memoir about kind of what I went through and how I'm surviving. And that's kind of how I got here.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear about your son. Second of all, I love that you've written a book because I have always felt that it's important for everybody to share their stories. Because it's honestly, it just takes that one person to read it and say, you know what, you changed my life because of what you went through. And a lot of times I feel like people can understand themselves better because of somebody like you going out and writing a book.
It's hope. That is one of my hopes. And the other one is that there was so much shame around the addiction. And that shame kind of kept going through the grief too. And Right after Nicholas passed away, I started on the internet searching, like, how do people live through this, right? Like, or is there a crack in the code? Like, is there a way to visit somebody who's dead? And I I stumbled upon a bunch of grief groups, and my husband and I started going to them just because this was life or death for us and for our other 2 kids, right? Like, how do you well, I didn't know anybody who had lost a kid to addiction. And the year Nicholas died, 80,000 kids in the US overdosed, which is equal to one commercial airliner going down every day. So I've met a lot of people who are kind of hiding in the shadows, who have a lot of guilt, who feel like they're not ready yet or able, maybe, to talk about it. I've met some people who are able and who really have changed my life. And being able to hear moms say, "Oh, people who are addicted come from families that love them," like, that was just so wonderful to
Hmm.
hear. Watching other people who have survived this has really kind of saved my life and made me want to kind of reach my hand out to other people who have gone through this.
Yeah, that's how it seems to be because it's like while you're going through these trials or challenges in life, I feel like there's oftentimes you feel so alone.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do have a question before we get into some of the stuff about, like loss and mental health stuff. I'd love for you to tell us about your son. Who was he beyond his addiction?
Hmm. Well, Nicholas had blonde hair and it was really straight, and I can just picture him running on the soccer field. He just looked like a dandelion because he was just always crazy. And um, he was a kid who was really comfortable on the soccer field. He loved his friends. If he scored and his friends would like circle around him, you could just see his face would just light up. Um, for a long time, he was very socially, like, had a lot of anxiety. Um, in high school, he got prom king and he came home and was like, "This is the worst day of my life. This was a joke. Like, I'm so embarrassed," right? And you're like, "No, kid, like, people love you." Um, I don't know what it was about him, but he couldn't believe that he was worth love and belonging in his classes. And I don't know. He's somebody who really needed somebody to shake him and say, "No, this is real. You are appreciated." Uh, he when he went to college, I drove him to Colorado Mesa University in Grand Junction, and when we were driving, he was like, "I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can leave home. I don't think I can be with new people." I and I wasn't sure he had the skills either, and I kept saying, let's just give it one day." We drove there from Arizona, so it was about a 10-hour drive, and the whole time he was just almost sick to his stomach. And I kept thinking, "Should I just tell him, 'You're right, forget it?'" But I mean, he had a team. I kept thinking, like, he can do this." And we pulled into his dorm, and for some reason at Colorado Mesa, they had all these uh, football players that were helping, and they'd bring all your stuff up to your room. And Nicholas was just like, looked at me like, "Oh my God, this is the worst day of my life." And they, brought his stuff in and brought him into this room. And there was a boy there. His name was Jacob. And Jacob was on Nicholas' soccer team. And Nicholas looked at Jacob and Jacob looked at Nicholas. And I swear, like, they must have known each other from a past life, if there is such a thing. Like, the two of them were like, yeah, I'm going to be okay. And that night, we went out to dinner with Jacob. And Nicholas said, "I feel like I've been here forever. Like, I know I'm gonna be fine." And he was. So he's somebody who really needed close friends, and he saw himself through other people's eyes, I think.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I love that he found his thing in life because I feel like sometimes that doesn't come until later. You don't
Yeah.
always find it at a young age.
Yeah. No, that is true. It's really beautiful. Yeah.
What do you wish people uh let me rephrase this it sounded better in my head, but then it started coming out. I was like, no. What do you wish people understood about substance abuse and the people who struggle with it?
Gosh, so much. How much time do we have? We'll be here for days. I feel like there is a contingent of society that feels like people who have addiction are almost dirty or disgusting. Like sometimes people will say to me, "Oh, your son didn't die of street drugs, so he's not one of them," or he became addicted because a doctor prescribed them, so he's not like those other people. Or somebody was really surprised that Nicholas didn't die of fentanyl, and they're like, "Oh, well, he wasn't one of those people." It just this underlying tone that people who are addicted to something are less than other people. And number one, that's wrong. Like Nicholas was a beautiful soul. And number two, it's just so ignorant. Like the reason that I think people reach out to drugs and alcohol is because they're uncomfortable in their body. And that drug gives them this magical feeling that they pretty much never find again, but they're always searching for it. I watched my son, who loved his family and who loved the opinions of other people, become a person who was very unlikable to his family and to other people. I mean, he stole and he got into accidents, and there was just chaos all around him. The drug wasn't him, and it made him do things that were not aligned with his values. And also, I think people think that people who are addicted can just one day get up and just use willpower. And I watched Nicholas, and if willpower were enough, he would have been sober. He wanted it really bad. He went through a lot of times telling us, like, this is the last time, like, I'm going to come clean. Please don't give up on me. He, he just really wanted to have a different kind of life than he had.
Yeah, and is his as he was going through this addiction, could you see the relationship with him and yourself like changing?
Oh, sure. Um, Al-Anon has 3 Cs. You didn't cause it, you can't cure it, and you can't control it. For a long time, I thought I could do all those things. So a lot of times, I would try to give him suggestions. I mean, my husband and I, we both went to Yale. We both have graduate degrees. We both were like, "We are gonna logic our way through this." I don't know that I don't I don't know that words are gonna help a person who's addicted. I feel like the one thing that could have helped Nicholas is if he would have had a group of people his age who were sober, who had invested them in him and had taken him under their wings. And I saying that, I don't know that would even have.
Yeah, it's hard. I've seen friends of mine go through addiction problems, and there's this kid I went to high school with, and not till I think it was only about a year and a half ago, maybe. And I heard of an accidental overdose. His were
Yeah.
they weren't prescription pills, I don't think, but
Doesn't
still,
matter.
it doesn't matter.
No. Yeah.
It's still
Yeah.
like substance abuse, and it just like I remember hearing that and it just broke me, and I was like, he wasn't necessarily a friend. He's more of an acquaintance. I knew him in high school, hung out with some of the same groups of friends, but it still hurts to hear when somebody passes away like in
Yeah,
that
and
way.
I don't know I don't know that there's a one way to treat people who are struggling with addiction. Like my husband and I tried, tough love. We tried having him live with us. We tried, drug testing him all the time. Um, we took him to inpatient rehabs. We took him to outpatient rehabs. I'm not saying it's not solvable, but I don't know. There is an element of a community that we I think we would have benefited from. Um, I don't know. I think people like to pretend that it's like, oh, it's a family problem. Let them take care of it. And I think it leads to a lot of isolation. And I think I just think a lot of people are struggling behind closed doors.
I agree with that, and I like what you said about uh, it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
It's I believe addiction and mental health are so closely related that way because different things work for different people.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Yep.
So, someone listening right now who may have a loved one that's struggling with substance abuse, what words of advice or what would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them to get to Al-Anon, that, you didn't cause it, you can't cure it, you can't control it. I would remind them that alcoholism is a family disease or addiction is a family disease, and that people tend to, um, in families that are struggling, they tend to isolate. We tend to try to solve things on our own. It becomes a really lonely, chaotic place. I mean, there was a time where Nicholas was stealing from us, and his car was in the shop, and my husband and I were just like bickering with one another incessantly because it feels like you're up against a dragon, and there's just not enough help out there. So I would tell that person, keep fighting, try Al-Anon. Um, I think one of my friends talks about her son and says that she just kept trying to keep him alive, whatever that meant, like maybe not giving him money, but making sure he had food. Um, there's just such a weird belief we have that people have to hit their bottom, and the bottom is so different from everybody. And what if their bottom is death? So
Mhm.
there's so much judgment on people. So I would try to tell them to give yourself some grace. Don't feel like there's one answer, and to go with your gut. And as long as you're doing the best you can for you and to try to keep your person alive, I think that's the best you can do.
And you mentioned a lot that or a little bit in there that your friend felt like they had to keep their son alive. Did you ever get to that point where you were thinking that in the back of your
Yeah.
mind?
Definitely. Like, we were doing like, um, we were bartering with Nicholas for money for going to rehab. Like, we'd say, we'll pay for your rent if you do rehab. And um, I, at one point, was paying for his groceries, and I was worried that he was spending the money on drugs instead. So I'd make him like send me a picture of him at the grocery store with his receipt, and then I would send the money. We would pay for him to have gas to go to work, and I'd say, I want to see a copy of the receipt. So yeah, I think people who are dealing with addiction, I mean, addiction is a life or death disease, and everybody around them is, trying to keep their kid alive. And I, I met this family who the dad was trying tough love, and I hope it worked. His son was in a halfway house, and he had been robbed, and he called and said, "I have no money, and we all have to leave the halfway house because if I guess there was too much drama or whatever." And he's like, "I've been living on the streets," and he said, "Could I have some money for bus fare?" And the dad was like, I couldn't trust that the money was going to bus fare. So I said no. And it just like, really? That's the poor guy. Like, no matter, it feels like it's a lose lose situation.
Yeah. You just reminded me of a personal story of mine that so I was really close to this person. I was really good friends with him in like middle school and the first maybe year of high school, and we just got into different crowds. But long story short, I've been out of high school for years, and probably it was probably about 5 to 6 years ago, I think. I had reached out to this person. I found him on Facebook or somewhere on social media, and I said, "Hey, how are you doing? Just wanted to catch up." And all of a sudden, and I knew he had an addiction problem. And all of a sudden, he started asking me for money. I was like, "Whoa! Like I haven't talked to you for like
Yeah.
10 years,
Yeah.
and I have a family to feed." And
Yeah.
he said, "Well, I'm stuck in this place." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry. Like I can't do it." And it's like, even in that time, it's like, do I feel guilty for this? But I still can't tell an answer to that. But it's like I don't know you well enough, and I'm sorry for whatever you're going through. It's just a hard situation.
Completely. And what if our rehabs worked, we could say like, oh no, these are the steps to getting somebody sober, right? For the pills that Nicholas was on for the opioids there and the benzodiazepines, there's a 70 to 80% or 70 to 90% relapse rate. And I don't, to me, we've spent all this money, $60,000 at a time for, maybe a 10 to 30% chance of him getting better. There isn't one path that's going to be like, this is how you do it. Kids who are treated with tough love die, kids who are given way too much die. It almost feels like we just don't know what we're doing with addiction yet, what the right answers are.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, and I don't know where it goes from there because what do you do? I feel like I don't know. We could go off on a whole other thing on that.
Yeah.
But this question is probably going to be one of the hardest I've ever asked on here. So just bear with me.
Okay.
Uh, can you take us back to the day you lost your son? Like, did it just feel like a normal day? What do you remember about it?
Um, well, the day that we lost him, uh, he was going to come over for dinner. He had called, and the last thing we talked about is it was Sunday, and he was going to come over for dinner. Um, my husband and I had just come back from vacation, and we really questioned whether or not we should go on vacation, but there was so much turmoil always with the addiction and with he had been an inpatient and outpatient. We decided, if we're going to wait to go on vacation until things are going to be good, we're always going to wait to go on vacation. So we'd just gotten home from vacation, and he had called and he had said, "Yeah, I'd like to come over for dinner." And I was like, "Yeah, we'd love to have you." I had a little hesitation because I wanted to say, "But don't come over high," but I didn't say that. And I hope he didn't hear the hesitation in my voice. Um, and we both hung up saying, "I love you, love you." I wish I would have said I love you like 7,000 times instead of just once. Um, and he didn't show up. Uh, a day passed, 2 days. We called the rehab. He was an outpatient then, and the rehab couldn't tell us whether or not he was going to the rehab. And they said because of HIPAA, which, whatever. And finally, I called the police and asked for a well person check. And the officer called from Nicola's apartment and said, "Don't worry, there's nothing smelly under the door." Um, And then they had broken in, and they found him. I They didn't call me back, so after a few hours of me calling and them not calling me back, my husband went, and, um, he found them all standing around him, so that's how we found out.
Ooh, that's tough to hear.
Yeah, you might wanna cut it out, I wouldn't listen to it. Mm.
I thank you for answering that because I was like,
What's
hope.
weird, though, is, like, people who have lost their kids, like, that's something, like, we sometimes we really wanna talk about it. One of my friends in one of my support groups, this really you should cut this out too. She texted me and said, "Hey, I just was looking at a picture of my son in the morgue." And she's like, "I want you to see him." And it's like, which of course I was like, "Okay." But it's like, it almost you want to show other people like this really happened. Like it's almost like it's impossible. And so sometimes talking about it is almost helpful because you're like, yeah, that like it's gonna anchor you in reality rather than living pretending something else happened.
Yeah, and to be honest, your story and what you just said, I love the rawness of it. I absolutely
It's
love.
it's
I
not great.
No, I'm not saying it's great. Like I love like the
The
how open and
honesty.
honest you are about it because I think this is reality. I think this is where we live. Like, and there's a lot of
That's
times where,
true. Yeah.
and that is the only reason why I asked that question. is So I appreciate you being open and raw and honest, even though it's
Well,
not the
it's not
easiest thing.
yeah, and it's not what you see on Instagram, right?
Yeah,
And that's
no.
what and that was part of what was keeping us not being honest about Nicholas's addiction with the world was the, like, wanting to have this perfect facade of, like, we have 3 kids and they're all athletic and they all are going to college and everything is great, and when in reality, we had one kid who was really struggling and it was tearing us all apart, and maybe things would have been a little bit better if we could have told the world, like, "No, things are not good."
And that just goes back to I've talked about this a little bit on the show is you never know what people next to you are going through. Like ever, ever. And I've had to learn to that it's caused me to be less judgmental towards people.
Yeah, that's true.
So only with your permission, I'd still love to keep that piece in there because
No, you can. It's yeah, I didn't
I like that you're being open and real. Like it takes a lot to be that vulnerable. Uh and do you find you said like people who've lost somebody, like to talk about it. Do you find it gets easier as time goes, or is it still always kind of hard to talk about?
honestly, the minute this happened, I was like, "Okay, we've gotta figure out how to not get eaten up by this." 'Cause, I mean, it could eat you up, and we've been in support groups with people who haven't told anybody that their kid passed away, and it's been a few years because they're, like, not in denial, but they just are so ashamed. Um, so Nick and I that's my husband's name, we joined a ton of support groups. We've read a ton of grief books. We made a commitment to do everything the grief books suggested. One of the grief books, Colin Campbell's Finding the Words, it's a great book. He talks about saying yes and that you need community. And so Nick and I, when anybody came over and was like, "Do you want to?" We always said yes, even though our first instinct was no. I absolutely do not want to go do that. Because community is really important and it's the one thing that's really kept us afloat. Um, The other thing was exercise. Like people said on the books, like you got to exercise. And so the two of us have been exercising every day. That's not negotiable. In our grief group lit, they talk about, one of the grief counselor talks about you need to metabolize grief. And so exercising helps with that. And it's 100% true. My journaling helped a lot. And I feel like we got to a place where it was like so bad that we knew that we had to take control of it. So your question was about like, does it get better? I think it depends on you. And for the two of us, I think it's gotten not better, but we live within the realm of this new thing called grief. And a lot of it's because we really focus on it. Also, I got a therapist and I have to say she's the best. And EMDR, do you know what that is?
Is
Um,
the eye
yeah, yeah,
movement?
for
Yeah,
trauma. Yeah.
yeah.
It's been extremely helpful to me. I don't know. I think I would be a basket case, I think, if I didn't have her and that. Um, so I don't know if it gets better, but I think we've had to really work at making things kind of fall into place.
And that makes sense. And I feel like what you're explaining is you, at some point, you realized that in order to survive your loss, you had to basically change your way of thinking.
Everything. Yeah. Yeah.
It's, yeah, it's, see, I'm
Have
trying to,
you
oh, go ahead.
have you heard Billy Bob Thornton lost his brother and he said at any one point in time he's going to be 50% sad and 50% happy. And I think that was really freeing for Nick and I. It was for me because I kept trying to get back to like how we were before, but you're never going to get back to
Yeah.
it, right? And I also kept trying to find like how is it that I'm going to be happy again? And maybe the answer is you're not ever going to be that happy again. You're going to live with this new reality. And that new reality is that this kid that you loved and who for 25 years was a really big deal in your world is gone. And so why would you expect it to be anything but kind of terrible for a long time?
Hmm.
And you're going to have to make joy where you can find it.
Yeah. And I'm actually really happy that you've been able to find some things to help you out along this road.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's not even always easy to do.
Yeah. Journaling helped a lot. I started when I was journaling, I still am journaling every day, but um, I started feeling more connected to Nicholas and Nick Cave, who I brought up before. He talks about that you kind of need to have a continual connection to somebody who's gone. And I've been journaling, and then the journaling turned into writing poems, which really is just journaling. Um, so yeah,
Yeah. You mentioned at the very beginning, goes back to your writing, I believe. Well, maybe it wasn't your writing. Maybe it is. I can't remember. My brain is off,
sorry,
but
my dog's
uh,
coming in.
nope, you're good.
Okay.
Uh, I believe you mentioned your memoir centers around the idea that grief mirrors pregnancy. Where did that realization come from?
Well, that was from my journal. When I started writing, I started feeling like describing what my body felt like. I felt like I was pregnant again at the first trimester where you're nauseous, you can't eat. Everybody says like, "Oh, you have the glow of pregnancy." Well, the first trimester, I was green, and when we experienced when I started off with grief, I was green with grief, and I started feeling like I was growing this thing called grief, and grief is half me and half Nicholas, just like the placenta was. And there was a period of time then, the second trimester, where I everybody else was moving on and going on with their lives, and I just felt like the grief was growing within me and I couldn't move on. And I just like would lay in bed and journal and feel pretty sorry for myself. And then there was a period where I realized I wanted everyone to know, and that was like my showing. And I told everyone, I still do. Uh, it's funny if somebody would say to us, like, "Oh, how many kids do you have?" My husband always like steps back. He's like, "I'll let you handle this." And because I'll tell you, I want people to know that there is a big, beautiful life that um, isn't here anymore, and people should know about him. Um, and then I said, I read that thing about from Nick Cave about asking grief to leave your body, and I did, and it actually is pretty effective to not have it just sit inside of you, but to think of it as its own entity, right? And my griefs, I think of him as like a little orangutan. And some days he's very peaceful, and other days he's a terror. And um, I think having a framework to kind of think about this thing called grief has been really helpful to me because our society is really grief illiterate. I can't tell you how many people, even my own family, who means very well, have said like, "When are you going to get over this?" Or when are you going to get back to doing, how you used to be? Or my dad said, "It seems like you're never going to be happy again." And like, you're right. This When Nicholas comes back, things are going to get better. But and barring that, like, we're going to have to live in what's real in the here and now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I feel like that would be the me like 5 years ago, is being that person. But doing this is like, no, you don't just get over stuff.
Yeah.
You have to, I guess the way I'm going to relate it back to me for a
Okay.
second. I'm not trying to make this about me. I
Yeah.
just want
Me
to
too.
relate it back to, so when I first started therapy, I was going for uh, depression and anxiety. And when I went in, I thought, okay, well, just tell me what I have to do to get over this, to get through this. And my therapist sat me down and he's like, looks me in the face and in the eyes, and he's like, Travis, you do not get over this. You learn techniques to get you through this. And that was a big realization for me, because I was like, well, okay, well, what does that look like? He's like, that looks like this is gonna be with you for the rest of
It's
your
real
life.
life. Yeah. Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
makes me have way more empathy for people and whatever they're going through, because
Yeah.
it's not just a phase. You don't just snap your fingers and
Yeah. Agreed. And I'm sorry that you have anxiety because I think I watched my own son struggle with that, and um, it 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 was it's not logical, so it was hard
no,
to.
yeah, it definitely is not logical at all. There's moments where you in your brain, it's not logical, but you still can't push those thoughts away. And going back to grief, though, was there like a certain point where you realized, well, I need to stop fighting this and learn how to walk alongside of it?
I feel like that happened at the beginning, just the first day, because I kept, like, thinking, like, "Okay, we can have a normal life if Nicholas is here." Like, there was no scenario where he wasn't there, where normal life came back. So I feel like that happened really early on.
That's good. What would you say? Never mind. In my head, it was a different question, but you've already answered it.
Okay. You can answer things twice too.
Let's see here. But there was stigma. That's where I was going. I feel like alongside of mental health, there's also stigma with addiction.
Mhm.
How did that play out, both when Nicholas was alive and after his death?
Well, you know, can I start with that after stuff? Like,
Yeah,
w when after Nicholas was gone, I felt like I felt like people were driving by my house, or my former students were talking to one another, and everybody was like, "Can you believe, you know, sh that lady was such a bad mom that y her son had a pill-sized hole in his heart." And there's a saying in Al-Anon, which is, "How free do you wanna be?" And my answer is, I really wanna be free. So, I felt like I got to a place where I was like, "Is that really what I wanna believe about the world?" And the answer is no, because it would be a terrible way to live. And so, I started trying to figure out how to find some grace for myself so that I didn't feel like I was the addict's mom, or that Nicholas was the addict. In Al-Anon, you have sponsors, and I have one, and she's just lovely, but she used to tease before Nicholas passed that I was so embarrassed by his addiction, and she used to say, "Oh, I think I'm gonna make you go on to the street corner and hold a sign saying, 'My son's an addict and I love him.'" And since he passed away, I feel like that's what I do now. I go on all my socials, and I wrote this book, and I'm saying, "My son is an addict and I love him." So that stigma has been really hard for me to beat down. Um, and then when he was alive, I think we all played into it. You know, we really we wanted him to get better. And I think we thought, like, the more hopeful we were, like, oh, this is just a phase. He's gonna hit his bottom. So we, while he was alive, I think we all were really trapped in that.
yeah. Now, I'd love to uh, bring up some of the good things. Looking back, what are some of your favorite memories of Nicholas that you want people to remember?
Well, he wasn't perfect. I think that's something that, when people pass away, you try to only remember. But he really loved soccer. And I remember he used to, especially in junior high and his freshman year, his freshman year, he got on the varsity team right away. He just loved it. But our next door neighbors, uh, the mom she was a teacher with me, and the mom told somebody, and somebody came back and told me, and they were like, "Yeah, Nicholas practices soccer with cones all by himself all the time." And I was really surprised people were talking about it, but it is true. Like that, he was like driven. It was a passion of his, and there's something beautiful about that. Just, a kid who loves something and wants to just be the best that they can at it. And the other thing about him, another funny story about our backyard is, so we are dog people and we have dogs, and Nicholas's job was to pick up the dog poop, and which makes sense because he was the one usually using the grass. So in any case, um, he did a phenomenal job, and we were always like, "Oh, he's really good at picking up the dog poop." And then one time my husband looked over the wall at our neighbors, and Nicholas was picking up the dog poop and flinging it over the road. Um, yeah, so he was somebody who liked to push his limits, obviously, and he was reckless. I remember the first time he he wanted to do gymnastics, so he was taking a gymnastics class, and he was maybe 7, and I took him there, and before it started, they had all the boys, and I think there was only boys, but they were like, "Oh, yeah, see how far you can go up on that rope. And it was a huge building. And, there would go a little ways, but Nicholas, like, he climbed all the way to the top of the rope. And, and it might have been 2 stories, maybe 3 stories up. And then he just let go like a crazy person and just fell all the way down. And everybody was looking at me and we were running. And like, he had the wind knocked out of him. And I was like, Nicholas, why did you let go? He's like, I didn't know what to do once I was up there. He's like, they told me to climb. And I was,
Yeah,
so
they
he's
didn't tell him how to get down. They just told him to climb.
exactly. So reckless and determined and a scooch. Um, One other thing is that he loved his family. He loved his brothers. And there was a time he was coming off the benzodiazepines and he was in ICU for 6 days with a swelling of the brain, and he didn't know who he was. He didn't know his name. Um, and I said, who are you? And he said, I'm the big brother. And I think if that's like when everything was stripped away, like that's who he was. He loved his brothers and he loved his family.
I love that. So I just have like 2 or 3 more here.
Okay.
What has your son continued to teach you even after his passing?
To be brave. Like I've been posting poems about him on the internet. To listen. Um, his dad started taking guitar lessons. So my husband Nick is he's a physicist. He's very, left brain, if that's a thing. But since Nicholas passed, he's been, playing guitar and kind of like singing love songs to him. So I guess he's taught me to really get in touch with kind of being in the moment and being present and like appreciating music and kind of holding space, and like maybe there's hope that he kind of is here on some level.
I love that.
Me
I
too.
really love that. And I love that your husband found something as well to pick up and do
It
that. I
is
think that's
really
great.
cute. Yeah. Well, it started because he wanted to play a Willie Nelson song. I think it's Willie Nelson, Just Breathe, because it reminded him of Nicholas. And then now he's just playing all sorts of kind of sweet songs.
It's awesome. Eh, I'm a huge fan of music, so
Uh,
I'd be that person to pick up something like that. But I can't play guitar for the life of me. I've tried, and it just is not me.
well, Nick didn't, he takes lessons, and he has performances every 4 times a year. So, and they're usually with 7 and 8-year-olds. So, he's like this, 54-year-old man amongst these tiny little kids. So,
That's great.
mm,
It is. And so, what do you wish people would stop saying to grieving parents?
I think it's not stop saying, 'cause even I feel like if you say something with good intentions, I think people, I can speak for me, I'll take it. I mean, I've had people say really stupid stuff where you're just like, oh my God. But I know that their heart is means well. I think what I would want them to do is just to talk to them, because I feel like a lot of times people are worried about like, oh, will it hurt her feelings? I don't know. Here's an example. My sister, her daughter, who I love, is pregnant and she's having her next dot. She already had a baby, so she's having her second. But my sister called and was like, "This is going to be a hard conversation because it's going to be hard for you to hear." And I'm sure that was really hard for my sister.
Yeah,
So it was beautiful that she like could hold both things. Like we all want her daughter to have a healthy, beautiful daughter. And at the same time, it can be sad that Nicholas isn't here to have kids on his own too. So, So maybe just to have those hard conversations and know that it was so beautiful that she called and said it that way because, of course, I feel that way. I feel sad that Nicholas can't have kids. And um, it was really, it was nice to find out from her and also to find out with like such a loving connection.
Yeah, and I think the way you put that was fantastic is the intention behind it. Because I have to admit, I'm often that person that says things with the right intention, but I don't always use the right words to people. And then I'll walk away and I'm like, I could have said that a lot better.
I had one of my dad's friends who said, sorry about Nicholas, but it is what it is. And I was like,
You're, yeah, that was like, for real? You really just said that type of thing?
yeah, but he's 82 or some age. Like, I'm sure it killed him to say it. Like, I'm sure. And so I had to take it as like, he's trying to read, like, he's trying.
And this is the last question that I had, but then there's just a few follow up ones. If your son could hear this conversation, what would you want him to know?
Come back. um, I'm that we miss him. And if there's anything that we did that could have stopped him, I'm sorry for I'm sorry for the mistakes I made. And I hope he knows how loved he is, how much we really love him.
I love it. It's all just really, really good. I love how open you've been throughout this whole conversation. Where can people find you?
Well, I live in Gilbert, Arizona, and you can find me at www.katierizzo.com. So that's my website. Or on Instagram, I'm Katie Rizzo 007. My students gave me that name. It's super cute. So there you can find my poetry. I have a book out called The Trimesters of Grief, and it's being sold anywhere books are sold. It comes out in October, but it's available for sale right now.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to add the links in the show notes for you. And last thing here is I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything you'd want to bring up that we did not discuss?
I think one thing I wish I would have added to the part where you said, "What would you tell a family who's struggling with addiction?" Um, I would tell them that something I learned in Al-Anon is to be a loving witness, and that's really helped me even with non people who are not addicted, that you're I feel like for a long time, I thought my role was to kind of guide my kids and help see, like, where there are pitfalls and kind of make sure that they're safe. And now I feel like my job is just to be a loving witness.
Love it. Well, Katie, thank you so much for coming on and spending an hour with me. I admire you for writing a book and sharing your story. I I know that it's not easy to be vulnerable, but I I admire the work you're doing and you telling the story, and I loved hearing about all about Nicholas.
Mm. Well, I love talking about him.
Great, and thank you all that listened. If this episode resonated with you, please share it and follow us. Thanks again. Until next time.